Welcome to another deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
Today, we're going to be exploring a fascinating firsthand account.
Okay.
That really delves into this intersection of faith and miracles and this age-old question of resurrection.
Right.
Bringing people back from the dead, literally.
Wow.
The piece is titled Resurrection, Symbolic or Literal.
Okay.
And what grabbed me right away was this contrast between the author's desire for tangible displays of God's power and their experiences within more traditional religious settings.
Yeah, that tension is really at the heart of the story.
Yeah.
The author's journey kind of starts in childhood.
Okay.
Where they were exposed to both C and E Christianity, Christmas and Easter, and spiritualism practiced within their family.
Okay.
It's interesting to consider how these early experiences might shape their later beliefs.
You're right. They describe the church as mostly focused on holidays and outward appearances, while their encounters with a spiritualist and even a witch doctor involved witnessing more immediate, tangible results.
Interesting.
For example, they mention learning to use Osiris cards as a preteen.
Osiris cards are a form of divination, similar to tarot, used to gain insight and guidance.
Gotcha.
What's fascinating is that the author describes feeling empowered by these early experiences with spiritualism.
Oh, wow.
They seem to crave that sense of agency and connection to something beyond the everyday.
It makes you wonder if that early exposure planted the seed for their later desire to see miracles manifested in a very real, concrete way.
Possibly, yeah.
Then at age 20,
they
describe accepting Jesus as their Lord and Savior, a profound turning point in their life.
Big time.
But instead of settling into a comfortable routine of traditional worship, their newfound faith seems to have ignited a new level of curiosity.
Absolutely. It's like they were searching for proof, seeking validation of their newfound belief in the supernatural power described in the Bible.
Right.
And it's not just about abstract concepts.
Yeah.
It's about seeing those powers in action, particularly healing and, yes, even resurrection.
And they find what seems like initial confirmation in their own family.
Oh, okay.
They describe witnessing their mother's recovery from addiction as a powerful example of God's intervention.
Wow.
This wasn't just a gradual improvement, but a complete transformation.
Huge.
That the author attributes to divine power.
It's clear that this experience was deeply impactful for them, solidifying their belief in the possibility of miracles. It's important to remember, though, that we're exploring the author's subjective experience.
Right.
They're presenting these events as evidence of a specific worldview.
You're right. It's about understanding their perspective.
Yeah.
However, even as their faith deepened,
Okay.
there was a growing sense of disillusionment with traditional church practices.
Yeah.
They seemed to crave a more active expression of faith, a community where miracles weren't just talked about,
Right.
but were actively sought out and experienced.
This desire led them to seek out a new church, one that embraced the idea of spiritual gifts and encouraged practices like healing prayer. It's here that we see the author truly come alive, describing a vibrant community of believers from different denominations.
Oh, wow.
Who shared this belief in the tangible power of faith.
They specifically talk about the excitement of participating in interdenominational gatherings and healing rooms, dedicated spaces where people would gather to pray for and witness healings.
Right.
They describe seeing people transformed, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually as well.
It's interesting to see how this new community seemed to validate and encourage the author's desire for a more active experiential faith.
Right.
But even within this supportive environment,
Yeah.
there's a persistent undercurrent of frustration.
Oh.
They express concern about the limited scope and frequency of these healings compared to what they perceive as the constant work of darkness in the world. It's like they're grappling with this sense of urgency, this need to combat negative forces in a more direct and powerful way.
This feeling seems to culminate in a powerful story the author shares about a group prayer led by a pastor in a struggling family's home. This isn't just a casual prayer session,
Right.
but a dedicated gathering of the entire church, praying for hours until they witness a dramatic shift within the family.
Oh, wow.
Even the husband and son, who initially weren't involved, end up overcome by the power of the experience, falling to the floor.
This event seems to solidify the author's belief in the collective power of prayer and faith. It wasn't just a personal experience, but a group effort that resulted in tangible change.
And then there's this almost mystical element to the story. A stranger.
Okay.
On the other side of town, inexplicably drawn to a literal light.
Wow.
Emanating from the house where the prayer was taking place.
Oh my goodness.
It's like something out of a parable, isn't it?
It is.
She ends up having her own spiritual awakening as a result.
Oh, wow. This story of the stranger really highlights the author's growing conviction that faith isn't just a personal experience, but a force that can ripple outwards, impacting those around us in ways we might not even comprehend.
It definitely adds another layer to their belief system.
Yeah.
And from here, their journey takes an even bolder turn. They move from witnessing healings to questioning why resurrection isn't something practiced more actively within the Christian community.
Right.
They even make a pact with their husband, agreeing to try to raise each other from the dead if the opportunity arises.
It's a bold commitment, and you have to wonder what was going through their minds when they made that pact.
Yeah.
Was it purely faith-driven, or was there perhaps an element of fear about the finality of death?
Right.
What did their husband truly think about this idea?
Right.
We don't get his perspective, but it's certainly a thought-provoking detail.
And tragically, this isn't just a hypothetical discussion for the author.
Oh.
Their husband unexpectedly passes away from a heart attack.
Oh.
You can only imagine the emotional turmoil they must have experienced, the grief of loss, coupled with this intense desire to put their belief into practice.
And this becomes the pivotal moment in the author's story.
Mm-hmm.
They reach out to their faith community, they pray fervently for their husband's resurrection, fully believing that it's possible.
But despite their efforts, their husband doesn't come back to life.
Oh.
This experience leads to some really raw, heart-wrenching questions about the nature of faith and the limits of prayer.
Right.
They grapple with doubt, wondering if there weren't enough believers present, or somehow the forces of darkness were too strong to overcome in that moment.
It's a struggle that many people who have experienced loss might relate to, that desperate search for answers for reasons why something so painful had to happen.
Yeah.
The author even references a book, Out of the Devil's Cauldron, which talks about the strategic work of evil forces in places like hospitals where people are particularly vulnerable.
Oh, okay.
It's a glimpse into a very specific worldview, one that sees the world as a battleground between good and evil.
It's interesting that they bring up this idea of spiritual warfare, this concept that there are unseen forces at play that can influence events in our lives.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder how much this belief system shaped their interpretation of their husband's death.
Right. Did they see it as a random event or as a deliberate attack by an enemy?
Yeah.
And if it was the latter, does that imply that there's always a risk of failure, even with the strongest faith? This is where we start to see a tension between the author's desire for control over life and death and the inherent unpredictability of the spiritual realm.
It seems like this experience, as devastating as it was, didn't completely extinguish their belief in the power of resurrection.
Okay.
In fact, it seems to have fueled their determination to find others who share this literal interpretation of Scripture and are willing to put it into practice.
This desire for a like-minded community, for a tribe, as the author puts it, becomes a driving force in their journey.
Yeah.
They're not content with simply accepting death as an inevitability. They're actively searching for people who are willing to connect fists and push the boundaries of what's considered possible through faith.
And this search takes on a renewed urgency when a young family friend tragically passes away.
Oh.
The author once again feels that overwhelming desire to see resurrection happen, to witness that ultimate victory over death.
Wow.
They describe connecting with another believer who shares their conviction, and they join their faith together in prayer, even though they weren't physically present with the deceased.
This idea of remote prayer is fascinating.
Yeah.
The author seems to believe that physical proximity isn't a barrier to spiritual power.
Right.
But if distance doesn't matter, why did they feel the need to physically gather believers in other instances? It seems like there's a nuanced understanding of how and when this collective power operates.
But even with their combined faith and the belief that distance isn't a factor, the miracle doesn't occur.
Oh.
And we see that familiar cycle of doubt and discouragement creeping back in.
Yeah.
The author wrestles with the question of why their prayers aren't being answered, why they're not seeing the results they so desperately desire.
It's a very human response, this wavering between faith and doubt, especially when confronted with repeated loss and unanswered prayers.
Even though the author still expresses a desire to keep pushing for these miracles, there's a palpable sense of weariness in their words.
Yeah.
It's as though they're starting to question whether their unwavering conviction is enough to overcome the seemingly insurmountable barrier of death.
Right.
It's a poignant reminder that faith, even when it's deeply held, isn't always a smooth and straightforward path.
Mm-hmm.
There are moments of darkness, moments of questioning, and that's okay.
It's that vulnerability, that honesty about the struggle that I find so compelling about this account. It would be easy to present a narrative of unwavering faith,
right,
but the author allows us to see the cracks, the moments of doubt.
Yeah.
And I think that makes their story all the more relatable.
Absolutely. And even though they're wrestling with these difficult questions, they end with a powerful call to action.
Okay.
They're not giving up, but rather redoubling their efforts to find others who share their belief in the literal power of resurrection.
Yeah, right.
It's like they're saying, if I haven't seen it yet, it's because I haven't found enough people who truly believe it with me.
What's fascinating here is this idea of collective belief as a catalyst for miracles.
Right.
It raises questions about the nature of faith itself.
Yeah.
Is it something deeply personal and individual, or can it be amplified, even energized by a shared conviction?
Right.
Is there a critical mass, a tipping point, where belief becomes potent enough to reshape reality?
That's a pretty mind-blowing concept.
It is.
It makes you think about those stories of mass healings or spontaneous remissions.
Right.
Were those isolated incidents, or could they be examples of this collective faith in action?
And if the author is right,
Yeah.
if connecting with others who share this fervent belief is the key to unlocking these extraordinary abilities, what does that say about the role of community in our spiritual lives? Is it just about support and fellowship, or is there a more profound energetic exchange happening when people come together with a shared purpose?
It really challenges us to consider the possibilities, doesn't it?
It does.
What if the author is right?
Yeah.
What if we've only scratched the surface of what's possible when people unite in unwavering belief?
This deep dive has certainly given us a lot to contemplate.
Yeah, it has.
The author's story is a powerful testament to the human desire for tangible proof of the divine, for a faith that manifests not just in words and feelings, but in actions and outcomes that defy our understanding of the natural world.
It's a reminder that faith can be a complex and multifaceted journey with moments of both profound certainty and unsettling doubt.
Right.
But even in those moments of darkness, there's a glimmer of hope, a persistent belief that something extraordinary is still within reach.
And perhaps that's the most important takeaway from this deep dive. It's not about whether we agree with the author's every belief, but about recognizing that yearning for something beyond the ordinary, for a connection to a power that can transform our lives and maybe reshape the world around us.
Right.
That's something for you to ponder as you continue to explore your own beliefs and experiences.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Of course.
It's been quite a journey, and we hope it sparked some new thoughts and questions for you.